On today's episode of Axe Hacks, we're going to continue with Project RG270 by adding a snazzy new pick guard. So in the last episode with this guy, we got the new pickups installed. They sound fantastic, but they're still mounted with pickup rings, and there's still the issue of the vacant single coil middle pickup route. So I went ahead and got a pick guard off of eBay that has been routed for rear mounted electronics. So we're going to get this installed, figure out a better way to mount the pickups since we had to deal with the trying to solder the nut to the back of the pickup tab issue last time, which didn't work out so well, and see how that goes for us today. Okay, so this is the guard that I picked up for the guitar. Like I said, I grabbed it off of an eBay seller. The seller is Pearl Guitars or Pearl Guitars, not sure which pronunciation it is, but I will include a link for them down in the description. Super great guy to work with. This is the second guard I've gotten from him, and they've both been really high quality. Keeping in mind for this installation that this guard is not specifically for this guitar, because there's no such thing as a pick guard for an RG270. This is an RG550 pick guard, so we're gonna kind of keep our fingers crossed and hope that it fits as well as I hope it does. All right, strings are off. Once again, got them out of my favorite single locking Ibanez bridge. Don't worry, this will be replaced in a very, very near episode, hopefully the next one. So, with the strings out of the way, let's go ahead and remove the pickup rings. Okay, then we need to remove the knobs and switch tip. Okay, and now we can see the bottom side of our pickups. So what we tried to do on here last time was solder these new nuts in place to the underside of the pickup mounting tabs. Problem is the solder didn't adhere to the nut very well, so once any pressure got applied to the head of the screw, the nut would just start spinning again. So what I'm going to try to do this time is I'm going to leave the solder there because it acts as kind of a good barrier for the nut to press up against. So all I'm going to try doing is adding a little dab of super glue to hold it in place while it's still under tension like this, and then while doing so, try to keep the super glue off of the threads so that we can then just back the screws the rest of the way out. Okay, so it's been a couple of minutes. Let's see if that super glue has set up well enough for us to remove the screws. Okay, the first one's staying in place pretty well. Looks like the super glue may have finally done the trick with these screws. Let's try the third one here. Now that we've got everything removed from the face of the guitar, we can lay the pick guard over it and see how it's going to line up. And right away, I notice a couple of things. The first thing that I notice is that there's actually still some green from the bottom of the neck pickup route showing from behind the pick guard right here. This is with the pick guard lined up to the volume and tone pots. The other thing is that the switch works technically without a tip on it, but if it goes all the way down or up, it comes into contact with the pick guard and kind of knocks it off center like that. And the other thing that I'm noticing is that the gap of green paint showing around the inside here is uneven. There's a lot more showing here than there is up here. So what I am probably going to do is slide this up a little bit, just to where it's hiding that green right here. And that does two things. It centers the pickup selector switch slot in the route so that it doesn't hit it anymore. And it makes it so that this gap is now even. So what we're going to need to do is kind of slot the holes for the volume and tone pots up just slightly, so that way everything will line up a little bit better. Okay, now we've got the pots out of the way, we can get this really lined up and see where the holes need to be adjusted to. I'm going to say right about there. That way this isn't hitting the guard at all. It does look a little goofy with the screws being a little offset from the slot, but like I already said, this is a RG550 pick guard, so everything's not going to line up quite right. Okay, so now that we've got our pick guard set up about where we want it, I'm going to mark where the slots for these pots need to end up with a Sharpie. And what we'll do here is get the majority of the routing taken care of with a Dremel and a router bit, and then smooth it out later with a file. Okay, at this point we've got a good amount of material removed. I'm going to use one of the washers as a reference to see if that's centered up yet. And it looks like we're really close. We have about 1 millimeter left to remove right there. Okay, we're looking pretty good. Now let's go ahead and grab that file and get that edge smoothed out just a little bit. It's not really necessary, but just something I like to do to make sure the job stays clean. Okay, that one's looking good. We'll get started now on the tone control pot. Okay, again, let's do a check with one of the washers. And that actually looks like we got it pretty much dead on the first time. We'll smooth that out with the file and call it good. Okay, let's get our pots reinstalled and make sure everything lines up correctly. Okay, great. It looks like we got the holes realigned pretty much dead on. The pickup selector can move back and forth without smacking into the pick guard. So let's start drilling some holes for the guard. So the way I usually go about doing something like this, just because we are going into basswood, which is fairly soft, and the screws that we're using are going to be pretty small, is just use one of the smallest drill bits you have available, because when you start to thread that new screw in to the soft wood, it's just going to kind of push the wood out and make its own threads. So with everything lined up here, I'm mostly looking at making sure the space is even down here where the green is showing under the bridge. You can kind of tell it's crooked if, you know, there's more green showing on one side than the other, so just make sure that that's as even as possible. You know, double checking the slot to make sure it's nice and even. And I think it's sitting in a pretty good spot. And then what we can do to make sure it's not going to shift around on us and screw up the alignment of our other holes is, once we get that first hole drilled, use that as kind of an anchor. Screw the first screw into it. Not all the way down necessarily, but just enough so the post isn't going to go anywhere. And then that will prevent the rest of the guard from shifting around on us. And also, while you're drilling these holes, try to make sure the bit is going down into the center of the hole as much as possible. Okay, so all I've done is go around and get 3 or 4 threads into the wood for each screw, just to make sure that everything is lined up properly. And it looks like this pickguard is going to work out just great for us. So now what I'll do is go ahead, back all these out, pull the pickguard back off, and get the pickups mounted up underneath. Okay, so this whole time we've been working on the guard, it has had a thin kind of laminate coating on it to protect it, and actually it looks like it came in handy a couple of times when we were filing those potholes. So now that all that's done, kind of the construction stage of this is over with, we can go ahead and remove it, because the heads for the pickup mounting hole, screws are going to be coming down right on top of it. Okay, so mounting the pickups to the guard is going to be just the same as mounting them to the pickup rings. And now that we're using a pick guard rather than pickup rings, I am using slightly shorter springs. And the reason for that is the pick guard is sitting flat against the top of the guitar body, whereas the pickup rings were raised just a little bit. So we don't need quite as much tension, or rather quite as much length from the spring. Alright, so we've got both pickups mounted. So I'm just going to pay attention to how the cables are being fed into the body as I lower the guard down. Okay, now that those are all mounted up, we can get the pickguard screws put in for real. And as for the aftermarket pick guard install, that is it. This thing's already looking way, way, way better than it did when we first started working on it. We ran into a couple small complications with the pick guard, with the alignment of the potentiometer holes, and again, those silly nuts on the underside of the pickup tabs. Ideally, we would have used something like epoxy or JB Weld to hold those in place, but the thing with those, other than the fact that I didn't have them on hand, is that they take quite a while to set up, and I just wanted to get the nuts secured and you know, move along with the video. So super glue sets up really quickly. It held them good enough for our purposes, and yeah, everything worked out fine in the end. So I did not even bother putting the stock bridge back in here, because you guys know how I feel about that bridge, and the next episode of Project RG270 is going to be a bridge replacement. So until then, you've been watching Axe Hacks, and I will see you next episode.